Welcome. Today I am focused on mastering math facts. Let's explore how mastering these can significantly enhance a student's math success and engagement. But first, hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Marion Busfield of Engaging Curiosity. This channel is here to support teachers with evidence-based classroom management strategies. I loved my time in the classroom and I was privileged to spend 17 years with students in a variety of contexts. And some of those contexts included, I was a homeschooling mom, then I became a classroom assistant, homeschool support teacher, I ran a literacy program in our school district, teaching grades 8 and 9 math and science, becoming a learning support and literacy intervention teacher, and finally teaching a grade 1-2 multi-grade classroom towards the end. It was a lot of different things. I learned so much, and I had the privilege of accessing a whole lot of extra instruction and learning. So mastering math facts is essential to your students. It's not just about answering quickly, but which does happen once they've mastered the facts, they practice them, they get what they call automaticity, which creates fluency, but more importantly, it frees up brain power for more complex problems. If they're not actually calculating and deeply thinking about the math fact and using their fingers, and if it just comes to them automatically, they can dig into deeper, more complex problems. And the research really does show it leads to greater math success later. And I remember having a conversation with my mom. It was a big conversation amongst some of her peers about, well, we had to learn rote, and is it really important anymore because students have calculators? It's really important. It is really important. But how we get them to master math facts has really changed based on what we find in research. So let's dig into that. So let's talk about one of the things we want to avoid and can avoid, hopefully, by mastering math facts. There are some exceptions, like an actual disability called dyscalculia, but without fluency, students might feel frustrated, and that will lead to disengagement and anxiety. My goal then with this video is to support you in ensuring your students stay confident and engaged in their math learning. Fluency helps your students tackle complex math tasks like multi-step problems by allowing them to focus without being bogged down by basic arithmetic. So now remember, this is the process. We want to master our math facts, which means that we understand 2 plus 2 equals 4. We don't have to go 2 plus 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Mastering it means that we know that 2 plus 2 equals 4. Automaticity means that we know that 2 plus 3 equals 4. And fluency is being able to go from, if you're able to stand at the front of the class, like I loved doing with my students, and having them shoot questions at me. And that's one of the ways I showed them that it was possible, was I just gave them answers like that because I was fluent. It's the same as reading fluency. You're not really thinking about the words on the page. You can almost predict. It's a little different with math, but you are almost predicting what's coming. And that is essential for multi-step problems, for good solid success with multi-step problems. So what's an example of something that gets easier when you have fluency, math fact fluency? Well, once they're comfortable with mental math, they can tackle things like multiplying fractions. Now where I live, we do, and I'm pretty sure the continuum is the same everywhere. It's just maybe at different grade levels. But we start with multiplication, but they're learning fractions at the same time, but they learn addition and subtraction of fractions before they get into multiplication of fractions. Now imagine being stuck on multiplication, not really fully understanding multiplication, or even addition for that matter, and then being told you have to multiply fractions, and getting into words like numerator and denominator and remembering which one is, and then throwing all of that in the air. So this is like, they're trying to picture the pizza pie that we gave them, and how like it's just overwhelming. And so then the mindset sets in, I can't do this. So it's really important that when they look at numerators and denominators, they already know really easily what their math facts are. Okay, so the basics, and this is pretty much laid out in your curriculum, I'd be guessing, although I do see a lot of times in teacher groups online, what curriculum do you use? What curriculum do you use? And there are some curriculums that have some solid strength behind them, that don't actually have a scope and sequence that includes strategies. It's got other good things, a lot of number sense in it, and it's but anyways, so let's label the strategies that we really do want the students to be able to know and identify, because if you are not in a classroom that talks about counting on or making 10, and later on your teacher starts talking to you about making 10, you're all confused. So anyways, foundational strategies include counting on, making 10, doubles, and of course all of this is addition and subtraction. And students should understand them and how to use each method. I know where I live, grade 1 must understand how to use them and when to use them. Grade 2, they need to have them memorized and be able to apply them. So now we're getting a little bit closer to what I promised in the title of this video. So to develop math facts fluency, you need to implement evidence-based strategies to master them. So I'm going to discuss 11 easy to implement strategies for helping students to master their math facts. And you can find the links to some of the activities in the comments below. And what I'm going to give you here, you will see that they are activities from my store because I know them and I love them and I've developed them with a purpose. I love evidence-based activities and I know the evidence behind them. And so I feel good about giving them to my students. So you can engage the whole class with activities like Write the Room or Number Talks to warm up their math brains. I do have a number of Write the Room activities in my store, and this is one example of one math strategy with them. And mine are quite differentiated as far as content and a number of things, but you'd have to look at it in my store to learn more about that. Number Talks I don't have in my store currently, not yet. That'll be years in the making because I've got many things to do before that. But I did use them in my class a lot. And I just loved hearing the growth, the conversation. And as students talked with each other, those who were listening learned a ton. So those whole class conversations also build community and safety and trust. And all of that makes math a safer place to be for those students who are struggling with their mindset around math. So full confession here, music is a fantastic way to reinforce concepts. My students did not get a ton of music. I'm not incredibly musical. We did a ton of everything, and that's kind of the reason I'm sharing with you that I'm not terribly musical. Don't think you have to do absolutely everything. Just make sure that you curate, select for your classroom how you're going to teach a range of things that you know are evidence-based, that you are authentically you teaching. And not to say that I couldn't have used music, because that's really important to a lot of my students. It's just the day goes fast and I was bringing in other things. And you know, another 5 years and maybe there'd be more singing in my class. It all takes time. So YouTube has an abundance of videos with songs for mastering all of the mental math strategies. Google them, check out a few, and see what you find that works for you. Okay, so we've talked about whole group games, and now I'm going to talk small group games. So you can plan card games or other interactive activities that fit the small group setting, and this promotes peer learning. Now, I didn't just have that during math class. I had cards available to my students during free time, and so why not? But so you've got games like War doesn't work, it's more of a partner activity, but Fish works, especially if you're using supetizing cards, which my students love to use. And I do have some of those in my store, I just don't have a picture of them here. But so whole group, we've talked about. Now small group, and again, there's this collaboration, it gives them choice, it means they can play with more than one of their friends. And you're doing the community building, there's peer learning. You've got your students who are more kinesthetic, they're holding the cards, they're moving the cards around, it's more active than just sitting with a worksheet. And for your students who are auditory learners, it's fantastic for them, it's their learning preference. And then there are more individual activities. Two that I've got pictured here is I've got a whole slew of color by number specifically for the mental math strategies in my store now. That will grow and expand, but I need to do some other kinds of activities in there. I've got a couple of the digital resources that you can see the pictures of right here. I think they're great. I just haven't had time to put them all together. I just wanted to explore and see what people thought about them. And because first of all, you're going to have students who prefer to work on their own, your introverts. That doesn't mean they should always get to work on their own, but sometimes you're going to want to allow them to work on their own. And you might even make it part of a choice board where students have to choose a small group partner and individual activity, but they have the right to choose which and when they do that. And that's part of differentiation, frankly. And it's way more autonomous for your students, and it'll give you an opportunity to really see what their preferences are. If they're always going for small group work first and then they're really able to focus on that, then you know that they're a little social bunny if you haven't already had some clues. And like I said, there are games that are really partner games. Some games are small group games. This picture of one that's in my store that I'm showing you here, it's 8.5 by 11 board with the instructions and the spinner right on it. It's really not big enough, I don't think, to have more than 2 students at it, but you may disagree. And what I've done with this, not for my Christmas ones, this is an example of my year-round ones, is there are all the strategies if you get the bundle, and each strategy comes with the 3 different missing number spots. So it's differentiated that way. It's also got with and without the number lines. So lots of options for differentiation. And again, this is a perfect partner game rather than small group game. And because the board is smaller, it kind of limits them to partners, I think. There are some fantastic online learning platforms that you may want to leverage. I know that it's part of our provincial curriculum that we need to give the students even in grade 1 and grade 2. And I know that a lot of primary teachers aren't fond of online learning, of screen time, but we are required to give them screen time. So I mean, I didn't have a problem with that. I just found good solid programs. In my classroom, I like to use Splash Learn for math for so many reasons. One of them, that it was free to me. The students found the little hippo engaging. The instructions were clear. The support was available. You know, if they got a question wrong or if they weren't sure how to do the question, it made sure they didn't move on until they got a certain amount correct. And yeah, it was just so many, and I could choose. I could have every student in my class working on different things if I wanted to, by going in behind the screen and at home and just selecting activities for each student. And I could track their activities and I could know exactly where they were. And I could see that some students were spending hours on the same thing at home. And so I could pull them aside and make sure that we covered that. It was a great way to observe where students are stuck. But there are also other programs like IXL and Khan Academy. I know that my husband uses a little bit of Khan Academy where he teaches at high school. I haven't found, he's told me that the students aren't finding it very engaging, but I know that when it came out, it was just groundbreaking. IXL, I had a colleague who really loved it. When I explored it, it was just getting going, and it wasn't complex enough for what I wanted, but I'm sure, of course, that they've really developed it since then. So I would encourage you to find programs that you really like. Most of them have, if they're not free to the teacher, they have, 2 weeks for free, so you can get in and poke around and see what your students think, whatever you want to do. And again, my experience is best with Splash Learn, and I didn't go further because I liked it. So we know that goal setting is good for students, and so progress tracking is kind of the inverse of goal setting. It helps students to track their progress with easy-to-use trackers. This helps them create a sense of achievement for themselves. And at its core, as I say, it's goal setting and monitoring, because, ideally they want to get through, the 5 activities in this mental math strategy. They can see themselves accumulating the stickers on their progress tracking sheet, and then they go on to the next one. So although they're not writing down a goal, there is a mental goal there, and they get to track it visually. Very powerful. And always, you want to create systems that make it easy for you, that essentially put child labor to work. All my systems were in place. That's a huge part of my classroom management, is my classroom organization. And it does take time, one thing at a time, but you design a system where students can progress independently through levels of difficulty. So at its core, this is also goal setting, as I mentioned earlier, as they work from one mental math strategy to the next. And what you can see below is the folders for my, what is called here a sequential learning system, because they're going through a sequence of activities. And you can see just barely the numbers there, and it looks like it jumps from 1 to 4, but I promise it doesn't. And all the numbers were in order, and they knew they had to work through them. And at the end of each group, for each mental math strategy, there was an activity that they had to do, and then I had to see it. And if I had any questions about whether or not they were actually able to achieve that on their own, then I would find a subtle way, in a gentle way, to supervise them, because otherwise I'm questioning their integrity. And but so they knew, early finishers, absolutely. They just automatically, what should I do? What do you do when you're all done? I wouldn't even answer the question. And they'd go, oh, and sometimes they'd look at a peer at the beginning of the year, and then pretty quickly they knew they'd just get up and go do it as soon as they were done. And I could stay focused on the students with whom I was working. And it was great to have in place. And of course, you do need to stay on top of the photocopying a little bit. That's what parents are for. If you've got a few parent volunteers, it's fantastic. One of the most powerful strategies is celebration. And I think sometimes we miss that one, especially for our students that are a little farther behind. Sometimes we feel so much stress and pressure to get them to grade level, because reporting is easier and we feel better about ourselves as a teacher. But honestly, you know what? If they're way far behind and they manage to be successful at something, we want to celebrate that because they've given it their best. So, and at the other end, of course, we want to celebrate when those students are doing well, because that's one of their gifts and one of their strengths. And we want to acknowledge and honor who they are as well. And so celebrate when students apply effective strategies, recognize their efforts and their goals, and when they have reached, when they have motivated themselves and they have reached new levels of growth, students will go farther, faster when we celebrate the small steps or the big ones. So I find all my classroom management pillars are integrated. And so some of you might say, well, I thought we were talking mental math strategies. We are. Growth mindset is essential. When my students felt stuck, they looked at the series of posters on my board, just little 8.5 by 11 posters. And we started with, I can do hard things. And they would get support, of course, from me. We're still going to support them. But we would remind them before we get started that there was no whining, that I still expected them to give me their best full effort. And whatever they achieved with their best full effort was enough for that day. And it's quitting and tempers and behavior that was not enough. And so model a growth mindset yourself. There is research to show, because a lot of teachers themselves are uncomfortable with math. I've got a colleague a friend who's a fantastic teacher and hates math, and it does not feel it's her strength. And the point is, she now realizes that she probably walked around home talking about how miserable she was at math, which is a message that we give to our children. Fortunately, she has a partner who is very strong in math, and so they got both messages and were just fine. But it's important for us to model a growth mindset. And if you make a mistake, I'm comfortable with math. I taught grade 8, 9 math, so grade 1, 2 is nothing for me. But I still made mistakes, so I just go back and I go, oh, thanks for catching that. And then you're just modeling your social emotional learning as well. I didn't send home a whole lot of homework. Our spelling program required that I did. And no, there wasn't too much that I sent home. Oh, there was a little bit of reading every night, but as much as anything, I considered that family time. But, and the reality is it's beyond our control how much they do anyways. Teachers do all sorts of checklists and agendas and stuff like that. It's really beyond our control. And I just think kids have spent enough time at school that they need to learn and grow and play at home. And so that was my philosophy of education. But I would send home games and resources that involve families and practicing math fact fluency together at certain times. So if they were leaving a week of school and the parents asked for homework, you better believe it. I would send home games. I'd send home write the room activities that they could use as task cards or post around and make it into an activity on a rainy day on holidays. I just have these all prepped, pulled out, and to pull out in an envelope. Sometimes they did them, sometimes they didn't, which is why the key is having them prepped so you're not stressing at the last minute, because they're not looking for 6 hours a day of homework. They're looking for you to give them something they can work on with their students. If you need to be clear with them and say, this is not exactly what we're working on, unless you're prepared to teach them exactly the mental math strategy, but this will give them something to keep them in the school mindset so that they're not coming back behind the 8 ball. So now, evidently, I must have talked you into the importance of getting your students to master math facts. So how to find time to master math facts. So do establish a time to practice. Now, it doesn't have to be, say, from like 5 to 11 to 5 past 11 every day. That was the end of our recess, the first 10 minutes of our math block. It doesn't have to be that time chunk. We didn't do that at all. That's when we did number talks. But my established time was every time I taught a new activity or I'd done a little bit of learning, then they broke up and they played games relevant to that mental strategy. And this was, so valuable on so many levels. But that was our time. And sometimes that meant we missed a day because of all the things that were going into that lesson, which sounds like a scary, horrifyingly long lesson. It's not actually. It would have been broken up in other ways. We're using whiteboards and calling out and other whole class games and kinds of things. But so establishing a time to practice, what does your routine look like? You're also going to want to have access to a variety of games and engaging activities. I have a colleague who, when we talked about games, says, I have one, my students love it. And that was it. And I thought, well, I'm glad your students love it. I'm almost wondering, that doesn't mean that they wouldn't love others. And I do believe in a variety. And I do believe, when I create my math games for my store, you're going to get the same activity in counting on by 1, counting on by 2, doubles, so that you've got the right the room activity looks the same, which is inclusive. You're going to get the differentiation in a variety of ways because that allows for your students to be unique in their inclusivity. And it means that when you send them to do that activity, you instruct it the first 3 times that you use it, and then after that they know what to do, whether it's counting on by 1 or doubles, near doubles. They always know what to do when they see that particular activity. So if you're going to have all of the strategies in a write the room activity and all of the strategies in a board game, and then all of the strategies in color by code and all of the strategies in, you get my point. You're going to have an awful lot of games, and an organizational system is necessary, but that creates engagement and variety and provides choice, so that it, coming back to the differentiation piece, if you want to have a choice, play a partner game. Well, do they want to play the board game? Do they want to play the card game? Do they want to? So you've got all these activities that they know what they like and what really speaks to them, and they can choose from that. And that all comes down to differentiation. Differentiation, there you've got your content differentiation, your process differentiation, product differentiation, learning environment differentiation, all the differentiations by having a variety of games, and with individual, small group, and whole group, you've got it all covered. Now, with everything I've told you about my store, it would be silly of me not to have links to these activities in my store. So you will find those in the comments down below. And of course, I'd be very gratified if you went to my store and chose to select some of the resources that I've made. They are a growing collection. I seem to put more time into YouTube videos than into games right now. But please come back and visit. And I thank you for your time. And whether or not you choose to go to my store, I really appreciate you sharing this time for me, because it's all for the kids, right? Meanwhile, are you ready to take classroom management to the next level? Download my gift to you, the free classroom management checklist to get started on the path to better teacher self-care. Use the bit.ly link you see on the screen. Oh, where am I? Or you can scan the QR code with your phone camera or find the link in the comments down below. Thanks for joining me, and I hope to see you soon. Meanwhile, let me thank you once again for joining me today. And on the right of the video screen, you will see some suggested videos. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. I typically post weekly. Sometimes it's a video like this, sometimes it's about a new activity or resource that I'm hoping will be helpful in your class, but I do aim to publish every Thursday. And I've also got a newsletter that if you sign up for the checklist, you automatically get to be a part of. So have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you soon. Bye now.